Hello and welcome to episode 69 of CultureWatch Radio. I'm Mark Rabich and with me is Bill Muhlenberg. G'day to you, Bill.
Great to be back.
Today we're talking about warnings and warnings that were given from people such as yourself about same-sex marriage and what would happen to society, and of course what has happened with COVID over the last few years. And it seems that a lot of these things are either coming to pass or there's backflips on stated positions from authorities from a few years ago, very different positions that were given back then. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, well, there's plenty of these specific examples, as you mentioned, that we can go into in detail. And I've written about a number of them of late. But, yeah, I've kind of prefaced all that by saying, well, we're not supposed to say, I told you so. But, well, many of us did. We did try to warn. We did try to sound the alarm, usually falling on deaf ears. And I, in one of my recent pieces, in which I title it, We Tried to Warn You, I look at, this goes straight back to the Bible and the prophetic ministry, certainly, where God would raise up a prophet to warn Israel, and he would tell them ahead of time, look, these guys are pretty stiff-necked, hard of hearing, cold-hearted type. I want you to warn them, but guess what? I'm telling you in advance, they're not going to listen. They're not going to be interested. They're going to hate on you. They're going to get very mad at you. You're going to be treated pretty poorly indeed. So if you read the opening chapters of Isaiah or Jeremiah or Ezekiel, everyone, you find the same thing. I want you to warn this people, but there are people whose ears are dull, their eyes are closed, their hearts are calloused, and they're not going to listen to you. So God even tells them ahead of time, not exactly a great commissioning, right? If we want to have some Christian ministry and we get people praying for you, we'll say all these wonderful words about God's going to bless you and give you a wonderful ministry and it's going to be fruitful. Well, it wasn't quite the commissioning word that Yahweh gave to the prophets. He gave them a pretty gloomy picture. You're going to be hated on. People will reject you. But I want you to give those messages anyways. That's your calling, to share truth. And, it was true of the prophets back then, and it's been true today, as you say, whether it's warning people, hey, if you go down the path of same-sex marriage, everything will change. You warned about that. I warned about that. So many did. Of course, we were laughed at. We were mocked. We were criticized. We were regarded as fools. Oh, nothing will change. But, of course, everything has changed. So now we got people being dragged off to courts for saying, I don't think children should be being entertained by drag queens in public libraries, you name it. Everything we warned about is now coming to pass. And yeah, we can spend time on the whole COVID madness, the lockdowns. So there's a lesson we need to learn here, and we get it way back in the Old Testament.
So there certainly is an aspect of history repeating itself here, isn't there?
No question at all. It's been, almost everything. Well, what is it, Ecclesiastes? There's nothing new under the sun. So, and of course, Santayana, the Spanish philosopher, those who refuse to learn from history are simply going to repeat its mistakes. So Christians of all people should be those who know their history, both biblical history and a bit of, world's history, so we don't keep making the same mistakes. So, it's easy to get the criticism if we look at the COVID thing, for example, how many times, or related issues, the whole Schwab and Gates and World Economic Forum, how many times were we told, oh, you guys, right, conspiracy theorists, tinfoil hat, nut jobs, we were mocked, ridiculed. But, of course, there's a big difference between the actual conspiracy theory, which is just that. It's usually something that's a bit hidden and conspiratorial, and something that's wide out in the open, right? If Bill Gates has clearly told us what he's doing, or Fauci, or Schwab, and they have, right? You can simply, there's a thing called the World Economic Forum. You can go to their website. You can read their articles. They have annual conferences where all the big cheeses fly in from around the world, everyone on their private jets, right? As they tell us mere mortals, well, you're going to have to eat bugs and give up your cars and plane flights to save the planet, right? They are not just doing it right before our very eyes. They're telling us exactly what they want. They've given us their agenda. So there's no conspiracy theory here. They've actually told us. All you have to do is read them, listen to what they said, go and watch their videos on YouTube, whatever. So it's a funny world we live in, where the ones who are seen as the enemy or the nut job are the ones who are simply trying to sound the alarm, whereas the guys who are the good guys are the ones who are saying, hey, give up your cars, give up your moving out of 15 minutes out of your suburb, give up your meat, give up your cows, give up your farms, right? They're seen as the good guys, and we who try to warn are seen as the bad guys. It's kind of like, hey, there's a truck rolling down the street at high speed. Your child is playing ball on the street. Get off the road, get off the road. It's like they turn on you and say, what do you think, got a nut job? We're trying to warn, we're trying to help people, but we get the flack, and same as the prophets of old.
So we're in this situation now where recently we had The Project, and some comedian got on and gave a pretty tasteless joke, and a lot of Christians took umbrage with it. And now I sort of understand. I've read people of two different viewpoints from the Christian world say, well, we should probably just ignore it because, that gives it oxygen and it sort of amplifies its effect, which is what the comedian obviously wanted, the outrage, all that kind of thing. But then the other side is that if you just leave it, that gives them sort of the opportunity or the green light, if you like, to continue doing this sort of thing. What's your take on it?
Yeah, well, look, that's often said about any number of these kinds of things, right? It could be a blasphemous work of art, so-called, right? We recall Serrano, the American artist, 20-odd years ago. Piss Christ was his title of his bit of art, right? A crucifix and a jar of urine.
Art, quote unquote.
Well, yeah. So, it was the same thing. And there's a lot of these. Do you just ignore it? As you say, you don't want to give it undue attention. But on the other hand, if we stay silent, guess what? They're simply emboldened, and they'll do it a whole lot more until it's right, right in our face, right in our schools, right in, our very churches. So there is a place for calling this out. And, the project example is just one. But, I ended up writing about that as well. And by the way, you don't have to be a Christian or, conservative. A lot of newspapers, in fact, former hosts or guests or whatever of the project later, could read articles in the press about, first of all, this guy has given this joke before. It's not as if it's new. He said the very same very poorly, blasphemous joke before. And, everybody who brings people like this on the show, they vet them, they know where they're coming from, they know the kind of stuff they've done in the past. So, the lousy apology of Waleed Ali and others, it was a bit as fake as the whole show is, saying, oh, we're sorry, we didn't mean to offend. Yeah, baloney. Well, first of all, he said, we're sorry if we offended Muslims and any Christians, because Waleed Ali is a Muslim. He got flack, obviously, from his Muslim community. He didn't give a rip about the Christian community. So, look, on so many fronts, even people who aren't Christians, people who've even been on the show in the past have been calling this out, saying this is kind of madness that they're running with, and it's just going to get worse if we don't take a stand. So it's the old, slippery slope in action. Again, goes back to the whole legalization of fake marriage. We said all these things are going to get worse. There's going to be cancel culture deluxe, right? Churches will be forced to do these things. Obviously, Christian florists, Christian wedding cake makers, go through the list. They'll all be forced to do things that they don't want to do. So we warned till we were blue in the face back then about the whole radical sexual revolution. Now it's everywhere, smacking us in the face, including primetime television. All we can do is sit back and again say, hey, we told you so. We tried to warn you. You laughed at us. You made fun. And by the way, you expect the pagans to make fun, right? But how many Christians made fun of me and you, right? Mark, you would know about this. You would have had other Christians say, oh, come on, Mark, you're carried away. You don't know what you're talking about. This is all fear-mongering. Ain't going to happen. So we got it plenty. And now we have to sit back and say exactly what we warned about is now happening, and it's getting worse every day.
You're certainly right about hearing that kind of stuff a few years ago. I remember it well, but here we have this repeated thing happening of warning people and the very things happening that they were warned about. What do you do in terms of, now you certainly fall on the side of saying things rather than not saying things, but how is it that Christians can maybe take things too far in opposition to what Christ says, given perhaps threats of violence or worse than that even? And where do you draw the line in terms of speaking out on these things?
Yeah, look, sure. We have to speak truth. We have to speak it in love. I mean, I think there is such a thing, right, as righteous indignation. The idea that we're always nice, we smile a lot, and that's how we act. Not quite what Jesus did when he formed a cord, a whip deliberately. He made one. He went into the temple. He flipped tables over, caused chaos. I don't think he was happy and smiling and wishing blessings on everyone. He was angry. He had righteous indignation, and he actually did things that, well, a lot of people would say, Jesus, you're being very violent. So, it's not exactly as if it's 100% out of place. In fact, if I recall right, remember the Serrano Piss Christ art thing, which was here in Melbourne. I believe in the end some Catholic schoolboys, right, went in and had a hammer and they smashed the artwork. Is that going too far? Maybe. But, sometimes you wonder, is standing up for what's right and with a bit of courage, even, you might take it too far. Is that better than 90% of the spineless wonders and wimps that we have in our pews that would never say a word, who would never do anything, have this really mealy-mouthed idea of Christians must be nice and would probably be angry if Jesus flipped tables today, right? So again, you got to get the biblical balance. Sure, we got to do it in love, and if you call up Channel 10 in this case and chew them out and curse them out, it's probably not a great Christian witness. But in theory, you can understand that people would be upset, right? I mean, again, it's not hard to imagine. What if they brought in a comedian who did the exact kind of blasphemous, sacrilegious joke, not about Jesus, but about Muhammad, right? Can you imagine the outrage? Not only would there be, Channel 10 is probably on flames by now, right? Muslims don't futz around, many of them, with this kind of stuff. The building could be burning down by now, and there'd be death threats, the whole bit. So we just have to see the hypocrisy, the double standards. Waleed Ali and the project would never challenge Islam, but they know Christianity is an easy target, so it's open season on the faith. And the Christian has to pray, all right, how do we respond? We can't be spineless wonders. But sure, we have to react in a Christian fashion. Although, again, I remind you, a Christian fashion may include flipping tables, right? So it's seeking God. Just this morning I was reading in the book of Joshua and how some victories with the Israelites, but some big failures. And I remember it said in one place where they had a big failure, they didn't consult God about it, right? They just rushed off in their own strength and their own flesh, and they were roundly defeated. So we need to do the same. All right, God, this is not good. Whether it's the project or a million other things, how should I respond? And give me the grace, the words to say, the spirit to say it in. It could be a million things. Having a peaceful protest outside of the Channel 10 studios, right? Nothing wrong with that. Take it further, right? Having peaceful prayer protests out of an abortion mill. That's even more serious. People are being killed there every day. So how do you respond there? What is a Christian response? Certainly at the very least, prayerful presence outside of an abortion mill. That seems right. Some might even say, well, maybe more is required if you really believed innocent babies were being slaughtered. So, yeah, it's an issue, and Christians need to think and pray how we do it. But at least we should be aware of what's going on, and we should have a little bit of concern and not just sit back in our easy chair and wink at everything.
So just to finish up, I liked what you were talking about there about standing up in, I suppose, the arena or public space. But you do this kind of thing a lot. How about for you personally in terms of not feeling like you get a lot of positive response? Do you ever get tired of warning people and speaking the truth? And how do you deal with that? And what would you say to those who are feeling the same, maybe a bit world weary with it all?
Yeah, well, certainly do get that. And I certainly do. Well, many times it'd be a lot easier just to give it all up, right? I could live a quiet and peaceful life, sit back, read a book, have a cat on my lap, as I do now, by the way. It'd be a lot easier, right? I wouldn't get the almost daily hate mail. I wouldn't get the occasional death threats, right? I wouldn't get all the grief and misery. But, well, look, as a Christian, what do? You look at Christ. He could have taken the easy road as well, right? Oh, look, the cross is too hard. It's, I just want to take it easy, live a good life. He went all the way to the cross for our sakes. So guess what? We're called to do the same. We have to take up our cross and the rejection, the hatred that goes with it, and, return the favor, if you will. Christ gave everything for us. We're called to give everything for him. So, yeah, it's going to be tough. If you do speak out, if you have a presence, whether it's more of a lobbying or dealing with the media, at least in the past, I did hundreds, perhaps thousands altogether, interviews, media, radio, TV, newspaper. But, for average Joe Christian, calling Channel 10 saying, hey, that was really offensive. That was appalling. And don't you please ever do that again. Contacting the politician, just doing simple things, getting a petition started, getting a letter to the editor of a newspaper. There's so much we can do. Sure, you'll get a little flack, but again, I go back to what I started. The prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, they were told ahead of time, you're going to get a bad rap if you do this. You're going to get a lot of resistance, and I'm thinking, 3 examples of many. If you looked at the largest evangelical church in America, largest Australia, largest Singapore, it's just 3 examples. Every one of these 3 churches, the biggest, most widely attended, guess what they're preaching? Are they preaching a hardcore kind of prophetic watchman on the wall message? Are they preaching repentance and turn from sin? Nope. Not one. They're all preaching, have your best life now. You can have, you can be prosperous and succeed and lose weight for Jesus. One of them even says, if you sin as a Christian, you don't have to repent. It's all covered by grace. So guess what? The most popular churches are the ones preaching not exactly a biblical message. So if I wanted to have a popular following, a large following, get invited to speak everywhere, well, I'd have to change my message radically. But I'll stay true to what Scripture is on about, and know that I'm never going to get a lot of invites. I'm never going to get often invited back, right? That happens all the time. You speak at a church, that's it. You're not going to get invited back, so you'll deal with small audiences. You'll get a small following, but hey, same with the prophets. The only popular prophets were the false prophets. Same today. So we got to encourage each other. Speak truth. Speak it in love. But we do have a ministry of being a watchman on the wall one way or another, and God will hold us accountable for what we say or what we don't say.
Great words. All right. Well, thank you for today's episode, Bill.
Always a pleasure.
And there's more on the CultureWatch website. Join us again next time with another episode of CultureWatch Radio.